It started on Thanksgiving night, when my grandfather, the man who built our empire, walked into dinner with a bruise under his eye. One bruise, one secret, and one black envelope tore our family apart. I thought we were built on fortune. I didn't know the foundation was already cracking.
Before we begin this story, let me know where you are listening from in the comments below.
My name is Emma Carter. I'm 26 years old. And what I'm about to tell you today will forever change the way you see your own family. When my billionaire grandfather walked into Thanksgiving dinner with a bruise under his eye, the room fell silent. The chandeliers shimmered over the mahogany table, casting light that looked too perfect for what was about to happen. Even the string quartet stopped playing mid-note. In that frozen instant, I felt something deep inside our family fracture. A hairline crack running through generations of polished lies. Thanksgiving at the Carter estate in Connecticut was a ritual, not a reunion. Every year, the house gleamed as if trying to outshine the emptiness inside it. The table stretched endlessly, covered in white linen and silver cutlery that could blind you if the light hit just right. Everything was beautiful and lifeless. I sat near the end of the table across from my mother, Rachel, whose elegance could slice through glass. Her smile was perfect, her affection rehearsed. My father, Mark, scrolled through his phone under the table as if business could protect him from the silence. I looked at my reflection in my wine and thought, I've spent 26 years trying to feel like I belong at this table, but the cold never leaves. Then the double doors opened. Henry Carter entered, tall, composed, wrapped in a charcoal suit that fit like authority itself. He carried the gravity of a man who had built an empire with his bare hands. But beneath his right eye bloomed a bruise, deep purple at the center, fading to yellow at the edges. It didn't belong to him. It didn't belong in this world of crystal and silver. My father tried to laugh, brittle and forced. "Dad, what happened? You take up boxing again?" Henry looked at him, voice steady as stone. "Some bruises," he said, "don't come from falling." The laughter died before it began. Even the servants froze. My mother's hand tightened around her glass. Henry walked to his place at the head of the table but didn't sit. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a black envelope sealed with red wax, marked with our family crest. The Carter compass. He placed it in front of Rachel. "Consider it," he said, a reminder. Her face paled. For a moment, she looked like a marionette whose strings had been cut. Then she composed herself and smiled with brittle precision. "Dad, must we turn dinner into a sermon?" "Truth fits every table," he replied simply. I felt the weight of every word sink into my stomach. The envelope sat between them like a live wire. My father shifted in his chair. My mother stared at it but didn't touch. Henry turned to me suddenly. "Emma, how's the shelter?" The sound of my name startled me. "It's going well. We're opening the new wing next month." He nodded. "Good. Remember, what you build only matters if it stands on the right foundation." My mother's smile turned sharp. "Oh, Henry, can we not discuss charity at dinner? Let's be festive." Henry's eyes didn't move from her. "Charity and gratitude belong in the same room. Unless, of course, you've forgotten the difference." The entire table stiffened. My father's jaw tightened. The conversation struggled to restart. Small talk, forced laughter, forks scraping porcelain. But all I could see was that bruise. When dessert arrived, Henry stood again. He didn't need to raise his voice. "I've lived long enough to know that wealth is an inheritance," he said. "Wealth can be passed down. Integrity cannot." Rachel straightened. "Dad, please." "Families reveal who they are," he said, "when they think no one's watching." "But I've been watching." He looked at my mother, then at my father. "The reminder," he continued, nodding toward the envelope, "is for both of you." My father's fork slipped. clattering against the plate. A splash of red wine spilled across the tablecloth, a stain spreading like accusation. Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. "What is this, Dad?" Henry exhaled. A warning. The silence that followed was unbearable. The fireplace popped, the sound too loud in the stillness. My throat felt dry. My mother finally reached toward the envelope but hesitated halfway. Henry turned to me. "You're all right, Emma?" "I don't know," I said truthfully. He smiled faintly. "Good. Honesty's a start." My mother cleared her throat, desperate to end the tension. "Let's toast," she said, voice brittle. "To family." Henry raised his glass of water. "To reminders." The clinking of glasses echoed like breaking glass. Dinner ended, but no one left the table. My parents pretended to talk, though their words didn't meet halfway. Henry stared into his untouched wine. The bruise under his eye looked darker now, as if the truth itself was swelling beneath the skin. When the servants cleared the plates, Henry remained seated. My mother's eyes darted to the envelope again. I could see her pulse flutter at her throat. Slowly she reached for it, her manicured nails trembling. The crack of breaking wax echoed like a gunshot. Henry didn't move. He only watched, calm and unflinching, as if he'd been waiting for this moment all his life. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. And as my mother peeled open the black envelope, I realized that bruise on his face wasn't the wound. It was the warning. Whatever was inside that envelope would tear through the Carters more deeply than any blow ever could. It wasn't a letter. It was a fuse. And that night, as the seal broke, our empire quietly began to burn. 3 days before the dinner that cracked my family open, I woke to the sound of my parents arguing. The kind of muffled, deliberate argument rich people have when they're trying not to sound desperate. The Carter house in Connecticut didn't echo. It carried sound. Down the marble halls, under doors, through paintings of ancestors who never stopped watching. I'd always hated how this place made secrets sound elegant. Their voices came from my father's office. The door was half closed, and through the gap I saw the glow of the fireplace, my mother pacing, my father sitting behind the desk, his jaw clenched the way it got when something wasn't going his way. "He's rewriting the will, Mark," my mother hissed. "You don't understand, he's cutting us out." My father didn't look up. "He's bluffing. He's been threatening to change that damn will for years." "This time it's different," she snapped. "He met with Evelyn Hale last week." The name made my pulse jump. Evelyn Hale, Henry's attorney for over 30 years. If she was involved, it wasn't a bluff. My father leaned back, voice low, calculated. "Then we'll convince him otherwise." "Convince him?" my mother repeated. "He doesn't listen anymore. He treats me like a stranger." "Maybe because you act like one," he said. The slap came sharp and sudden. I flinched, even from the hallway. After a pause, my mother's voice softened, trembling but dangerous. "You have no idea what he's capable of, Mark. He's not senile. He's vindictive. If he gives that money to Emma—" My name stopped me cold. "What about Emma?" my father asked, suspicion threading through his voice. Rachel's tone lowered to a whisper, but I caught fragments. Foundation, signature, trustee. It wasn't the first time I'd been invisible in my own home, but it was the first time I realized invisibility could be useful. I stepped back from the door before it creaked and gave me away. My hands were shaking. The air in that hallway felt wrong, heavy, expensive, poisonous. That afternoon, Henry came to visit. He wasn't supposed to. He'd stopped dropping by unannounced years ago, after my mother called his visits intrusions. But he arrived with a book under his arm and that quiet, deliberate smile that always seemed to know more than he said. "Got a minute, Emma?" he asked. We sat in the sunroom, where the light poured through glass walls onto the winter garden. He handed me the book, a worn leather-bound volume titled The Architecture of Integrity. The spine cracked like an old man stretching after a long sleep. "It's not about buildings," he said, reading my confusion. "It's about foundations." He pointed to a passage he'd marked in ink. "A structure built on greed will always collapse under its own weight." "I thought you might need this someday," he said. I smiled, faintly. "You say that like you think something's going to collapse." He met my gaze, calm but serious. "Every dynasty does, Emma. The question is who's standing when it does." I didn't know what to say. He leaned back, the afternoon light glinting off the glass behind him, haloing him in gold. For the first time, I noticed how tired he looked. Not weak, just worn in the way old oaks are before a storm. He sighed. "When I built Carter Industries, I believed in strength. I thought money could buy protection. But money doesn't protect. It tempts." He turned the book toward me again, tapping the page. "You, my dear, are the foundation now." "Me?" I laughed softly. "Grandpa, I work in social outreach, not finance. I'm hardly the Carter legacy." He smiled. "Legacy isn't profit margins. It's conscience. That's rarer." For a heartbeat, the room felt still, like time had folded, and I was a child again, sitting beside him in his office, building towers from coins and calling them castles. Then his tone shifted, the way a clear sky does before lightning. "Emma," he said, "never mistake silence for peace. There are people in this family who'd rather inherit ashes than nothing at all." I froze. "What are you saying?" "Just this," he said softly. "Loyalty is expensive, and greed always comes to collect." Before I could respond, my mother's voice cut through the hallway. "Dad, there you are." She entered the sunroom with a smile too wide to be sincere. "You didn't tell us you were coming." Henry rose slowly. "I didn't think I needed permission." My mother's eyes flicked to the book in my lap, then back to him. "Always teaching lessons, aren't you?" He smiled thinly. "Only to those willing to learn." Her jaw tightened. "Well, let's hope you've left your lectures at the office this time." For a moment they just stared at each other, 2 generations locked in a quiet war. Then Henry placed a hand on my shoulder, gentle but firm. "Remember what I said, Emma. Build your ground." When he left, I watched him walk down the driveway, shoulders straight against the cold November air. The wind caught his coat, and for a fleeting moment, he looked fragile, like someone carrying too much weight alone. That night, my mother found me reading the book again. "You should stop letting him fill your head with his ideals," she said flatly. "That man's losing touch with reality." "Or maybe," I said quietly, "he's the only one who hasn't." Her eyes narrowed. "Be careful what you imply, darling." But her voice cracked just enough for me to know she was afraid. Later, lying awake in bed, I heard my father on the phone. His voice was low, measured, the voice he used when deals went bad. "If he moves the assets before Friday," he said, "we'll handle it ourselves." Friday. Thanksgiving. The words looped through my mind like a countdown I didn't yet understand. I turned the book over in my hands, my fingers brushing over the underlined sentence Henry had left for me. "Integrity is the foundation. Everything else is decoration." It didn't feel like advice anymore. It felt like a warning. And by the time Thanksgiving arrived, I realized he'd meant it literally. The dining room still smelled of cinnamon and candle smoke when everything changed. I can remember every detail: the glint of silver forks, the quiet hum of the fireplace, the way the air trembled as if it already knew what was coming. The black envelope sat between my parents like a wound that refused to close. No one spoke. Even the waitstaff kept their distance, moving like ghosts in the periphery. Henry Carter, my grandfather, the man who built cities out of signatures, sat at the head of the table, posture perfect, face unreadable. The bruise under his eye looked darker in the candlelight, as though it was growing. He wasn't just bruised, he was marked. My mother tried to break the tension first. "Dad?" she said with forced levity. "You're scaring everyone. What's in that thing? Another one of your tests?" Henry's expression didn't change. "A reminder, Rachel. That's all." Her laughter sounded brittle. "You've made your point. Now stop being dramatic. We're family." "Are we?" Henry asked softly. Something in his tone made everyone look up. The warmth in the room evaporated. He reached for the envelope and slid it back toward himself. The red wax seal glinted like blood under glass. He tapped it once with his thumb, the sound echoing louder than it should have. "This isn't drama," he said. "This is consequence." Then, with deliberate calm, he broke the seal. The sound, that small, sharp crack, felt like the start of an avalanche. Inside was a folded letter and a small silver USB drive. He took the letter first, unfolded it, and read a single line under his breath before setting it down in front of Rachel. "Recognize your handwriting?" he asked. Rachel froze. "What is this?" "Your confession," he said evenly. "And your husband's voice is on the drive." My father's face drained of color. "Henry, that's absurd. You've been manipulated. Who's feeding you this?" Henry cut him off with a look that silenced everyone. "I don't need anyone to feed me the truth. I watched it." He nodded toward the USB. "Play it." No one moved. "Go on," he said quietly. "Or I will." My father reached for the drive with a trembling hand, but Rachel stopped him. "Mark," she whispered, "don't." "What's on it?" I asked, voice shaking. Henry's eyes flicked toward me, softening for a heartbeat. "Proof," he said. "Proof of who left me this bruise." A chill rippled through me. My gaze darted between my parents. My mother's eyes were wide, glistening, but it wasn't guilt I saw. It was fear. My father looked cornered, dangerous in his silence. "I didn't touch you," he said finally, his voice too calm. "You must have fallen. You're confused, Henry." My grandfather leaned forward, his tone slow and deliberate. "You think I don't know the weight of my own son's hand?" My father's chair scraped against the floor as he stood, his voice rising. "You're out of line. You're trying to destroy this family because of your paranoia." "Sit down," Henry said. He didn't raise his voice, but it carried the kind of authority that could still command boardrooms. For a moment, I thought my father might hit him again, but then his shoulders dropped, and he sank back into his chair, breathing hard. "Dad, this is insane," my mother said, her voice trembling. "You're humiliating us in front of who?" Henry interrupted. "The only person in this room who still knows what honesty means?" His eyes shifted to me, and my stomach turned cold. Rachel swallowed hard, forcing composure. "You're sick, Henry. You've let your bitterness twist you. We've done nothing wrong." Henry smiled, small, almost pitying. "Then you shouldn't fear the evidence." He pushed the USB across the table. It stopped in front of my father's plate. No one touched it. The clock on the wall ticked. 1, 2, 3. Until even that sound felt unbearable. Finally, Henry spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. "A man can survive betrayal from enemies. But betrayal from blood?" He looked up, meeting each of our eyes in turn. "That leaves bruises that never fade." I could feel the weight of his words pressing against my chest. My mother stared down at her plate, her hand trembling around her wine glass. My father's jaw worked silently, like he was grinding stone between his teeth. "Grandpa," I started, but he lifted a hand. "Not tonight, Emma," he said. "Tonight isn't for comfort. It's for truth." He took a deep breath and turned to the rest of the family gathered at the table, cousins, uncles, spouses, all frozen, pretending to be invisible witnesses to something sacred and terrifying. "Let this be clear," Henry said, his voice gaining strength. "I won't be signing the transfer documents. The company, the estate, the holdings, they stay where they belong." Rachel's head snapped up. "You can't do that. We've spent our lives working for this family." Henry's laugh was soft, bitter. "You've spent your lives working for yourselves. The family was just the brand." The room went completely still. My father stood again, red-faced. "After everything I've done for this empire?" "For yourself," Henry corrected. "You built walls around greed and called it legacy." For the first time in my life, I saw tears in his eyes. Not weakness, but pain too old to hide anymore. "I thought I raised you better," he said. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then he looked at me again. "Emma," he said quietly, "whatever happens next, remember this. Integrity costs more than inheritance. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." His voice trembled, but his eyes didn't. Before anyone could respond, he stood and left. The table. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded louder than any slam. For a long time, no one spoke. Rachel reached for the envelope with shaking fingers, as if touching it might undo what had just happened. "He's lost his mind," she whispered. "He's trying to destroy us." My father's hands clenched into fists. "Then we destroy him first." I sat frozen, the echo of those words ringing in my ears. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment the bruise became a weapon, and the war inside our family truly began. The air inside the dining room felt wrong, too still, too heavy. The candles flickered as if they knew what was coming. My grandfather, Henry, had left the room only minutes before, and now he returned with Evelyn Hale, his longtime lawyer, walking silently behind him. Her presence turned every whisper into guilt. Evelyn set a slim recorder on the table, her expression calm but sharp. My mother went pale. "You brought your lawyer to Thanksgiving?" Henry didn't answer at first. He stood tall at the head of the table, his bruise catching the light like a badge of defiance. "We're long past pretending," he said finally. Evelyn pressed play. My father's voice came through, cold and unmistakable. "Get him to sign the transfer, Rachel. Once it's done, he can rot in that mansion of his. The company will be ours either way." The words hung in the air. My mother's face drained of color. "Mark, tell me that isn't..." Henry's tone was calm, deliberate. "It's your husband. Recorded in my office. I've kept copies." My father stood abruptly, rage flickering across his face. "You had me spied on?" "No," Henry said. "I had you trusted, and you proved me wrong." Evelyn opened a folder and spread documents across the table. Wire drafts, fake signatures, authorization forms. My mother's handwriting stared back at us like a confession carved in ink. Henry's voice trembled. Not from weakness, but from pain. "You tried to take everything I built, and when I refused to sign, you struck me. That," he touched his bruise lightly, "was your final argument." Rachel gasped. "No, Henry, he didn't mean..." "I meant every word," my father snapped, his mask breaking. "You'd have left us nothing. After all I've done for this family." "You did it for yourself," Henry cut in. His words were steel. "You built walls of greed and called them legacy." The silence after that was suffocating. The fire popped, sending sparks across the hearth. No one moved. Then Evelyn said quietly, "Mr. Carter, would you like to proceed with the second matter?" Henry nodded. She withdrew a new black envelope, its red wax seal unbroken. My mother's eyes widened. "What is that?" Henry's gaze shifted to her. "My new will." Rachel's lips parted in disbelief. "You rewrote it?" "Last week," he said. "Everything I own, the company, the estate, The trust has been reassigned. My father leaned forward, furious. You can't just erase your family like that. Henry's tone was cold as marble. Family erased itself when it chose greed over truth. My stomach twisted. Grandpa, I whispered. What are you saying? Evelyn's voice was steady. Effective immediately, the Carter assets transfer to Emma Carter. I froze. The world around me blurred. My mother's chair scraped back. You can't mean... her? Henry met her eyes. Yes. She's the only one who still remembers what decency sounds like. Mark's fists clenched. You've just handed her a war she'll never survive. Then she'll fight it with integrity, Henry said simply. I wanted to protest, but words wouldn't come. My pulse roared in my ears. Henry's gaze softened. You once asked me what it meant to build something that lasts, he said. Now you'll learn. Rachel's composure shattered. You've lost your mind, she shouted. You think she'll love you for this? She'll hate you when she realizes what you've done. Henry's eyes glistened, but his voice stayed calm. Love doesn't require inheritance, it requires truth. My father's tone dropped low, dangerous. You're making a mistake you can't undo. Henry straightened, shoulders squared. Mistakes can be forgiven. Betrayal cannot. He handed the sealed envelope to Evelyn. File it tomorrow. Evelyn nodded, gathering the papers. It will be done. Rachel sank back into her chair, eyes red, her hand gripping the tablecloth. You're destroying this family, she whispered. Henry turned toward her, tired but resolute. No, I'm saving what's left of it. The words lingered in the air like ashes. He looked at me once more. Emma, remember this. Every empire falls. The question is whether you'll build on its ruins or repeat its mistakes. I wanted to say something, to tell him I didn't want any of this. But all I managed was a nod. He smiled faintly, then turned toward the door. Evelyn followed him out. The doors closed softly behind them, a sound that felt like finality. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The chandelier hummed, and the only movement came from the dying fire. Then my father's voice cut through the silence, low and venomous. You think this makes you the heir? He said. You just inherited a war. My mother's eyes found mine, burning with something sharper than grief. You'll regret this, Emma. You always regret what you didn't see coming. I didn't answer. My gaze stayed fixed on the empty doorway, where my grandfather had stood. The bruise under his eye a final wordless sermon. That night, the Carter name broke in half, between what it had been and what it might still become. And as the candles burned low, one thought pulsed through me like a heartbeat. Integrity costs more than inheritance. The morning after Thanksgiving felt heavier than any hangover of wine or guilt. The Carter mansion, usually alive with chatter and service bells, was silent. The air smelled like old smoke and cold marble, the scent of something finished. I found Henry in his study, sitting by the window, the bruise under his eye deepening into a shadow that seemed to grow with him. A folder of papers sat open on his desk beside a cup of untouched coffee. Without looking up, he said, Evelyn delivered the will. By now your parents will have read it. My chest tightened. You really did it. You changed everything. He nodded slowly. It was overdue. Money can't cleanse what it corrupts. I stepped closer. Why me? He turned, meeting my eyes, tired, kind, unflinching. Because you never asked what things were worth. You asked what they meant. Before I could answer, the door burst open. Rachel stormed in, her hair disheveled, a crumpled copy of the will clenched in her fist. You've lost your mind, she shouted. You gave everything to her? Henry stayed calm. I entrusted her with it. Mark followed, silent but burning. His expression was controlled fury, the kind that scares you more than a shout. Rachel threw the papers onto the desk. After all we've done for this family, you repay us like this? Henry stood slow but steady. You managed appearances, not legacy. Don't confuse the two. We sacrificed everything, she cried. No, Henry said quietly. You traded everything. Mark finally spoke, his tone low and dangerous. You've just handed your empire to a girl who has no idea how to protect it. Henry's reply was steady as a hammer. Then she'll learn, and she'll build something worth protecting. Their anger collided with his calm like waves against a rock. I felt like a spectator to a war older than me. Evelyn appeared in the doorway then, poised as ever, carrying a briefcase. Mr. Carter, she said, it's time. Rachel spun toward her. Time for what? Evelyn opened the case, taking out the official filings. Clause 21 confirms full transfer of Carter Industries, Carter Holdings, and the estate to Ms. Emma Carter. Any legal contest forfeits remaining inheritance. My mother stared, stunned. You can't. He can, Evelyn said simply. Mark's voice broke into a bitter laugh. You've made her your puppet. But when this world eats her alive, don't say I didn't warn you. Henry didn't blink. If integrity is weakness, then I'd rather see her starve than become what you've become. The silence that followed was thick and final. Rachel sank into a chair, her voice small. You're destroying this family. Henry sighed. No, I'm saving what's left. Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp again. And you, she said, almost spitting the word. You let him do this? I swallowed, hard. I didn't let him do anything. She laughed bitterly. You think love makes you righteous? Wait until it costs you everything. Then she stormed out, heels striking the marble like gunfire. Mark lingered, staring at Henry. You always said power meant responsibility. Now you've given it to someone too young to know what either means. Henry met his gaze evenly. Maybe that's the point. Mark turned to me, his voice colder than the air. You think you've inherited an empire? You've inherited a battlefield. When the door finally shut behind him, the quiet returned. Deep, solemn, final. Henry sank into his chair, exhaling slowly. Wars end, Emma, he murmured. Truth doesn't. I sat opposite him, the magnitude of what he'd done pressing down like gravity. You've given me everything, I said. What if I fail? He smiled faintly. Then fail with honesty. It will still be worth more than their success. Outside, the first snow began to fall. Silent, clean, erasing the footprints that had stained the driveway since last night. Evelyn gathered the documents. Everything's official now, she said. I'll file it personally. Thank you, Henry replied. It's time the Carter name meant something again. When she left, Henry leaned back, closing his eyes. For a moment, I saw the weight of the world in his shoulders. The price of telling the truth. They'll come for you, he said softly. Your parents, the board, the press. You'll have no friends in the beginning. But remember what I told you. The foundation, I whispered. He nodded, eyes glinting. Always start with the foundation. I sat with him until the sun shifted and painted the frost gold. I still didn't know how to be an heiress or what to do with an empire. But I knew this. I wouldn't let his last act be wasted. When the first call from a reporter came, I didn't pick up. I looked at Henry's reflection in the window. Still, solemn, unbroken, and whispered, I'll build it right this time. He didn't answer, but I saw the faintest smile. That night, the Carter fortune stopped belonging to greed. It belonged to intention. And that, I realized, was the real inheritance. The morning after the will went public, the world discovered what I already knew. Power built on lies collapses loudly. The first call came from Evelyn. Brace yourself, she said. It's everywhere. I turned on the TV, and there it was, Carter dynasty implodes, betrayal, and new heir named. My grandfather's Bruise stared back at me from a blurred photograph. Every news anchor called it a tragedy wrapped in scandal. I muted the sound before they could say my name. Outside, a sea of reporters gathered at the estate gates, shouting questions, their cameras flashing like weapons. Emma, did you manipulate your grandfather? Is the will legitimate? Where are Mark and Rachel Carter? I closed the curtains. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing in the quiet. Henry sat at the breakfast table dressed in a gray cardigan, calmly buttering toast as if the world hadn't just caught fire. His serenity was maddening and comforting all at once. Don't read the headlines, he said without looking up. They don't write for truth. They write for noise. I know, I said softly, taking the seat beside him. But what if their noise becomes the truth? He smiled faintly. Then we'll outlast it. Noise fades. Integrity doesn't. He looked tired. Smaller somehow, but his voice carried the same steady authority it always had. I reached out, brushing my hand over his. The hand that once built empires, now thin and trembling. I'll protect it, I said. What you built. He shook his head. Protect what it stood for, not what it was. The buildings, the stocks, the name. They're just bricks. The foundation is what matters. That word again. Foundation. Before I could respond, Noah Bennett appeared in the doorway. I hadn't seen him since last spring, when he left for Boston. He'd been Henry's assistant once, sharp, kind, and quietly loyal. I came as soon as I saw the news, he said, voice gentle. Henry's eyes warmed. Good man. Emma will need people who don't mistake decency for weakness. Noah turned to me. You holding up? I tried to smile. Define holding. He laughed softly. Then you're doing better than most. Henry coughed, a dry, stubborn sound, and waved us closer. You'll both handle the transition together, he said. Evelyn will help with the legal side. The rest is trust. Noah nodded, but I could see the question behind his eyes. What happens when trust is the very thing that's been broken? By noon, the first damage was done. The company board released a statement questioning Henry's mental clarity. Several executives resigned in protest. My mother's PR team leaked photos of Henry leaving his doctor's office, twisting the narrative faster than I could react. Henry didn't seem surprised. Let them, he said. Truth doesn't defend itself with press, releases. It survives by patience. But I saw how much it hurt him, not because of the accusations, but because of who they came from. That evening, he was too weak to attend dinner. I brought his food upstairs, but he only smiled and said, Sit, Emma. You need to eat more than I do. I sat by his bed as he spoke quietly, almost like he was narrating to himself. When I was your age, I believed control was power. Then I learned control is just fear dressed in discipline. Don't build that kind of empire. I wanted to promise him I wouldn't, but I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat. Later that night, I received an email from an anonymous account. The subject line read, You should have stayed quiet. Attached was a blurry photo of me leaving the estate. Beneath it, Your family won't be the only ones ruined. My hands shook. I wanted to delete it, pretend it didn't exist. But something in me, that stubborn piece of Henry's blood, refused to hide. I printed the message and showed it to him the next morning. He barely glanced at it. Fear is cheap, he said. People spend it when they're broke on dignity. Should we call the police? I asked. No, he said. We call Evelyn. We do things properly, not dramatically. He paused, eyes drifting toward the window. You'll have to decide soon whether to release the evidence, the recording of your father and the footage of that night. The thought turned my stomach. The footage. The proof that Mark had hit him. I hadn't watched it yet. I didn't want to. Do I have to? I whispered. He studied me for a long moment. Justice doesn't require revenge, he said, but truth demands exposure. I didn't answer. My chest ached with the weight of his words. For days, I juggled meetings, calls, and statements. The tabloids painted me as a gold-digging heiress, a manipulative granddaughter, a naive puppet. But every time I faltered, I heard Henry's voice in my head. Calm, unwavering. Build your ground. One afternoon, I found him in the garden, sitting by the frozen roses. He looked pale, but peaceful. You know, he said quietly, I used to think the bruise would fade, but maybe some marks aren't meant to disappear. Maybe they're meant to remind us what happens when we forget who we are. I knelt beside him. I'm scared, Grandpa. He smiled faintly. Good. That means you care. He placed his frail hand over mine. Emma, let them lie, let them scheme. Just don't let them turn you into them. I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. I won't. He leaned back, eyes half closed, whispering, You'll do fine. Integrity takes time. Let the noise burn itself out. That night, as the snow thickened outside and the lights of the estate dimmed, I checked my phone again. Another message from Noah. We found something on the USB. You should see it. I stared at the screen. Heart. Pounding. The file Henry had left me, the one labeled proof, wasn't just evidence. It was a choice. Release it and destroy what was left of my parents' reputation. Hide it and risk becoming another keeper of silence. I looked up at the dark hallway outside Henry's room. The house was still, like it was waiting for me to decide what kind of Carter I was going to be. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the truth. I was afraid of what it would reveal. The USB drive sat on my desk for 3 days before I had the courage to touch it. Small, harmless, silver. Yet every time I looked at it, it felt like a live wire pulsing under my skin. Noah kept calling. Emma, you need to see it. He said gently, over and over. Whatever's on that drive is the reason your grandfather gave it to you. It's not just proof. It's protection. But I couldn't. Not yet. I wasn't ready to see my father's face in that moment, the moment the bruise on Henry's eye was born. I spent those days pacing the house that no longer felt like home. The estate was quieter now. My parents had vanished from the public eye, and reporters camped outside the gates like vultures waiting for movement. The Carter name was still valuable, just no longer for the reasons we used to brag about. Henry was fading. I could see it in his posture, in the way his hands trembled when he reached for his tea. Yet his mind was sharp, clearer than anyone's in the room. He saw everything, including my hesitation. One night he called me to his study. The air smelled of cedar and paper and memory. You still haven't watched it? He said, not asking. I didn't lie. I don't want to see my father like that. He looked at me, eyes calm but piercing. The truth isn't supposed to be comfortable, Emma. It's supposed to be cleansing. He reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. Don't mistake silence for mercy. Sometimes silence is complicity. The next morning, I gave in. Noah came over, bringing his laptop and his quiet steadiness. We sat side by side in the study, the same room where Henry had been attacked. My palms were damp. My throat was dry. Noah inserted the drive and opened the file. The video loaded with a mechanical click. And then, there it was. Henry's study, dimly lit, late at night. My father stood near the desk, his voice low and furious. My mother was behind him, arms crossed, her face pale and hard. Sign it, Dad, Mark said. You're old, you're tired. Let me take care of it. Henry's voice, calm but firm. I built this company on trust, not theft. I won't hand it over to greed. Then, a blur. My father's hand slammed against the desk, then swung. The sound of impact cracked through the speakers. Henry fell backward, clutching his face. My mother stepped forward, her voice cold. You shouldn't have made him do that. And then they both left, the door closing on his silence. I froze. The room around me disappeared. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The image of my father's rage and my mother's indifference burned itself into me. Noah reached over, pressing pause. Emma, he said softly, but I couldn't look away. He hit him, I whispered. He actually... Noah's voice was steady. You knew, deep down. I shook my head, tears spilling. Knowing isn't the same as seeing. Henry's voice echoed in my memory. Loyalty that requires silence isn't loyalty at all. When I finally looked at Noah, my voice trembled. If I release this, it'll destroy them. He nodded. And if you don't, it destroys you. I turned away, pressing my hands to my face. There has to be another way. There isn't, he said quietly. The truth doesn't negotiate. That night, I sat by Henry's bed and told him I'd seen it. He didn't ask what I'd do next. He just nodded, as if he already knew. Whatever you choose, Emma, he said softly, make sure you can live with it. Because once the truth is out, it never goes back to sleep. He reached for my hand. Justice isn't revenge. It's revelation. Don't mistake one for the other. The next morning, I called Evelyn. Release the footage, I said. By sunset, it was everywhere. The clip aired on every major network. Henry's bruise finally explained in painful clarity. The nation watched as Mark Carter, heir apparent to the Carter Empire, struck the man who had built it. The reaction was swift and brutal. The board expelled my father. The police reopened an assault case Henry had refused to press before. Rachel fled the city, her name trending alongside words like complicit and forgery. I should have felt relief. I didn't. I sat in the living room with the TV muted, watching the footage play on a loop. Noah came in quietly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. You did the right thing, he said. I shook my head. It doesn't feel right. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Because truth doesn't feel good. It feels honest. There's a difference. Henry was resting upstairs, but I knew he'd seen it too. When I checked on him later, he smiled faintly through his fatigue. You chose integrity, he whispered. And integrity always costs something. I sat beside him, tears burning behind my eyes. It cost everything. He looked at me with the kind of peace that comes only after decades of storms. Good, he said softly. That means it mattered. As I left his room, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My face pale, eyes hollow, but alive. For the first time, I saw a woman who wasn't just Henry's granddaughter. I saw someone carrying his fight. Downstairs, my phone buzzed with notifications, news alerts, death threats, messages from strangers calling me brave and others calling me heartless. I turned it off. Outside, the snow had started again, covering the estate in silence. The lights inside flickered against the frost, reflecting in the window like tiny embers refusing to die. For the first time, I understood what Henry meant when he said the foundation mattered more than the walls. The walls could fall, the house could burn. But the ground, the truth, was still standing. And maybe, just maybe, that was what freedom actually felt like. By morning, the estate was unrecognizable. The same halls that once echoed with laughter now felt like the aftermath of a war. Outside, reporters swarmed the gates, their voices slicing through the cold. Emma, did you leak the video? Is your father guilty? I shut the curtains and let their noise fade into static. Henry sat near the fireplace, wrapped in a wool blanket, a cup of tea trembling in his hand. The bruise beneath his eye had faded, but the hurt behind it hadn't. You look tired, he said. I am. Good, he murmured. It means you care. I dropped onto the couch beside him. The world thinks I destroyed my family. He smiled faintly. You didn't destroy it, Emma. You just stopped pretending it was whole. His calm should have soothed me, but it only deepened the ache in my chest. I'd spent my whole life wishing to be seen, and now the entire world was looking, just not the way I'd imagined. The footage had gone viral overnight. My father's name became a headline, my mother's face an image of denial. By noon, the police had issued a warrant. I watched the arrest on TV in silence. Mark Carter, heir to an empire, led away in handcuffs. Somewhere, Rachel was hiding behind a wall of PR statements and half-truths. Noah arrived before sunset. His coat was dusted with snow, his eyes tired but kind. You're trending, he said quietly, for all the wrong reasons. I didn't do it for them to see, I said. I did it because I couldn't keep looking away. He nodded. Then you did it right. That week, the house filled with strangers, lawyers, journalists, volunteers. Evelyn worked around the clock to secure the new foundation Henry had envisioned. Let them talk, she told me. You can't control the story. You can only keep writing it. Henry grew weaker. His voice thinned, but his clarity never did. They'll call you naive, he told me one night. Let them. Better naive than numb. I squeezed his hand. Do you think they'll ever understand why I did it? He smiled. Understanding comes long after forgiveness. When he slept, I wandered the mansion. Past portraits that once seemed like witnesses of our perfection, now silent judges of what truth had cost. I paused under his old photograph, him younger, unbruised, proud. I hope this is enough, I whispered. The next morning, Evelyn and Noah cornered me in the study. We can't just survive this, Noah said. We have to build something out of it. Evelyn handed me a draft press release, the Carter Foundation, rebuilding community through transparency and trust. I blinked. You really think anyone will believe in that name again? They will, Noah said. If they believe in you. So we started. The mansion's ballroom became a donation center. The dining room turned into a space for job counseling and community outreach. The same floors that once carried silk gowns now carried muddy boots and grocery bags. And for the first time, the house felt alive. Every night, I'd return to Henry with stories. A family reunited, a young man offered a scholarship, a woman whispering thank you through tears. Henry would listen with his eyes closed, smiling faintly. That, he said once, is what I meant when I said you were the foundation. But even in the rebuilding, guilt lingered. I thought of Rachel often, the mother I'd exposed and lost in the same breath. Then one evening, a courier arrived with an envelope bearing her handwriting. Henry was awake when I brought it to his room. From her? He asked. Yes, I said. He nodded. Then read it. The first line was short. You were right about us. I'm sorry. 6 words, but they tore through every wall I'd built around my heart. The rest was part confession, part apology, an admission of fear, love, and greed woven into one final truth. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just wanted me to know she finally saw what she'd become. She says she's sorry, I whispered. Henry smiled, eyes glassy with age and pride. Then maybe that's the first honest thing she's ever said. I folded the letter and placed it under his clock, letting time keep watch over it. Outside, snow drifted over the gardens, softening every hard edge. Downstairs, I heard the low hum of volunteers cleaning up, their laughter faint but real. Noah found me in the hallway, exhaustion written across his face. You did it, he said quietly. You turned the ashes into something that breathes. I shook my head. We did. Later that night, I sat beside Henry's bed as he drifted between sleep and wakefulness. The lamplight turned his white hair to silver. Grandpa, I whispered. I think I'm starting to understand what you meant. His lips curved into the faintest smile. Good, he murmured. Honesty rebuilds what money ruins. The house was silent but not empty. For the first time since Thanksgiving, the air felt lighter, like we had exhaled the lie and made room for something human. I looked out at the snow, at the faint footprints leading away from the door, and thought about Rachel's letter. Maybe truth doesn't just set you free. Maybe it gives you permission to begin again. A year had passed since the world last whispered the Carter name with scandal on its tongue. In that time, the mansion had changed the way a soul does. Not quickly, not painlessly, but completely. The marble floors no longer carried the sharp echoes of footsteps that tried to outrun guilt. They carried the gentle shuffle of volunteers, children, and neighbors. Outside, snow covered the lawns in a clean white hush. Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon, coffee, and something softer. Peace. It was Thanksgiving again. For the first time, the day didn't feel like performance. It felt like gratitude. The ballroom had become the heart of the Carter Foundation, a space filled with laughter and chaos. Long tables stood where grand banquets once did, lined with simple food and paper decorations made by local children. Laughter rang where arguments once lived. From the balcony, I watched it all. The house, alive again. It looked like a story Henry would have wanted to end this way. He'd been gone nearly a year now. The winter he passed was quiet, the kind of silence that settles when a voice too large to replace finally fades. His last words had become a compass for me. Forgiveness isn't a debt, Emma. It's a gift you give when your heart is ready. Back then, I didn't understand what he meant. I thought forgiveness was an act, a decision. Now I knew it was a process, one that began in silence and ended in peace. Hey, a familiar voice called behind me. Noah stood there, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, hair dusted with flour. You're supposed to be resting. I smiled. Resting is overrated. He grinned. Tell that to your foundation's CEO who hasn't eaten all day. I leaned against the railing. Look at this, Noah. The house finally feels honest. It feels alive, he said. Downstairs, Evelyn directed volunteers like a general, sharp as ever. She caught my eye and raised her coffee cup in salute. As the crowd gathered for dinner, I took my place at the head of the table, Henry's old seat. His photograph rested before me, the same faint smile caught forever in black and white. I lifted my glass. This isn't a celebration of wealth or legacy, I began, voice steady but soft. It's a celebration of truth, of what we can rebuild when we stop pretending everything is fine. The room fell silent. I felt a lump rise in my throat. My grandfather taught me that forgiveness isn't something we give because others deserve it, I continued. It's something we give so our hearts can breathe again. Applause rippled around the table, warm and human. For a moment, I saw Henry in every smiling face. Afterward, as the chatter grew and the children began a messy pie-eating contest, I slipped away to his study. The scent of old books and cedar still lingered there. On the desk, beneath the old clock, lay the letter I'd never opened again. My mother's, handwriting, careful and precise. You were right about us. I'm sorry. 6 words that had haunted and healed me in equal measure. I'd kept that letter like a fragile truce between past and present, unsure whether to honor it or let it fade. But tonight, surrounded by life and laughter, I felt something stir. The same quiet courage Henry had taught me. I folded the letter into my coat pocket and left. The drive to the hospice took an hour. Snow drifted through the headlights like falling ghosts. The nurse at the front desk recognized me immediately and led me down a narrow hall. Rachel looked smaller than I remembered. Her sharp edges had softened. Her once perfect hair was gray at the roots. She turned toward the sound of my footsteps, confusion flashing before recognition bloomed in her tired eyes. "Emma," she whispered. For a moment, I just stood there, the words caught in my throat. "Hi, Mom." Her voice trembled. "I didn't think you'd come." "I didn't think I would either." She tried to sit up, but I gestured for her to stay. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her chest rise and fall beneath the thin blanket. "I saw the foundation on the news," she said softly. "You've made something beautiful. It's not just me." Her eyes glistened. "Henry would be proud." I nodded. "He is. I think he's been proud for a while." A silence stretched between us, not hostile, just fragile. Years of bitterness, misunderstanding, and guilt all sat between our hands, waiting for someone to reach first. Finally, she whispered, "I ruined everything, didn't I?" I shook my head. "You were scared. You confused control with love. I understand that now." Her lips quivered. "Do you hate me?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the woman who'd schemed or shouted, but someone broken long before she'd broken others. "No," I said softly. "I did, for a long time, but hate's just grief that never learned how to cry." Tears spilled down her face. "I'm sorry, Emma." "I know," I said. "And this time, I believe you." She reached for my hand. Her skin was cool, thin, trembling. I let her hold it. For the first time since I was a child, her touch didn't make me flinch. We sat like that until her breathing evened out, her eyes closing. Before I left, I placed her letter on the nightstand beside a vase of lilies and whispered, "Rest. I'll carry what's left with kindness." Outside, snow fell thicker, coating the world in silence. For the first time, it didn't feel like erasure. It felt like grace. When I returned to the foundation, most guests had gone home. The fire in the ballroom burned low, and Noah was stacking chairs. He looked up as I entered. "You went," he said softly. "I did." He studied my face. "Did it help?" I nodded slowly. "Forgiveness doesn't fix anything," I said. "It just stops the wound from speaking for you." He smiled, proud, tired, tender. "Then maybe that's enough." We stood there as the last embers crackled. On the mantel, Henry's photo gleamed in the fading firelight. I raised my glass of untouched cider toward him and whispered, "You were right. Forgiveness really is the only inheritance that never loses its worth." Outside, the snow kept falling, soft, relentless, cleansing. And for the first time since that bruised Thanksgiving night, I felt the past loosen its grip. Not erased, not forgotten, just finally forgiven. 2 winters had passed since the night everything shattered. The Carter mansion no longer felt like a stage built for pride. It had become something softer, humbler, alive. The chandeliers still hung in the ballroom, but their light now fell on long wooden tables where neighbors and volunteers shared dinner. The same marble floors that once echoed with footsteps of power now carried the quiet rhythm of belonging. The air smelled of cinnamon, coffee, and ink. A home that was rebuilding itself one act of kindness at a time. We called it the Carter Foundation. The name still surprised me. It had once stood for control, fear, and a legacy poisoned by greed. Now it was painted on banners and letters filled with hope. Every morning I stood at the balcony and watched people arrive, single parents clutching paperwork, teenagers in borrowed suits for scholarship interviews, veterans looking for housing. They came here not for charity, but for a chance to begin again. And every time I thought of Henry, he would have loved this, the chaos, the humanity, the imperfection of it all. I often imagined him sitting by the window with his tea, that faint smile playing on his lips as he'd say, "Now that's what a Carter name should mean." Noah appeared behind me, clipboard in hand, the faint scent of sawdust on his coat. "You're zoning out again," he teased. "I'm remembering," I said. He smiled. "Good. Remembering keeps it honest." We walked together through the hall, past the new mural painted by local kids. A field of hands holding up a single tree, its roots spreading into words: trust, courage, kindness. The colors were uneven, imperfect. That's why I loved it. That evening, the foundation hosted its winter dinner, the event that had replaced our family's old Thanksgiving banquet. Gone were the tuxedos and chandeliers polished for show. Now there were paper stars hanging from the ceiling and laughter that sounded unpracticed, real. At the front of the hall hung a framed photo of Henry. Not the boardroom portrait from the old days, but one taken by me, him in his cardigan, smiling gently in the garden. His eyes still carried that mix of warmth and warning that used to unnerve people who underestimated him. When it was time to speak, I stepped forward. The crowd quieted. "My grandfather built an empire," I began, "but what he left behind wasn't wealth. It was something harder to keep: integrity. He used to say money doesn't define who you are, it reveals it." Tonight, I finally understand what he meant. I glanced at Henry's photo and continued. This house was once a monument to appearances. Now it's a foundation for truth. Every life touched here. Every meal, every scholarship, every job. That's what we've built from the ashes of our mistakes. That's our real inheritance. Applause swelled through the hall, gentle but full. Evelyn stood near the back, tears shining in her eyes. She mouthed, "He'd be proud." After the event, I stepped outside. Snow fell in slow spirals, soft as breath. Across the property, the housing project we'd built shimmered under the streetlights. The windows glowed with small human stories, children reading, couples laughing, someone playing piano. Noah joined me, slipping an arm around my shoulders. "You're thinking about him again," he said. "Always." He smiled. "He'd say you finally built it right." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe he'd just remind me the work never ends." We walked toward the fountain in the garden, its marble restored, its water frozen into crystal layers. The inscription Henry had chosen still gleamed faintly beneath the snow. "Money doesn't corrupt, it reveals." Below it, I'd carved my own addition. "Truth, once revealed, sets you free." I brushed the snow off the letters. "You were right, Grandpa," I whispered. The foundation mattered more than the empire. Inside, the last guests were leaving. Evelyn helped stack chairs beside a young woman, Grace, one of our first scholarship recipients. She caught my eye and waved shyly. "Ms. Carter," she said, "thank you for believing in me. You changed my life." I smiled. "You'll change more lives than I ever could. That's how legacy works. It multiplies." Her grin was so bright it made my chest ache with something like pride. Later, when the lights dimmed and the house fell quiet, I walked alone through the hallways that had once terrified me. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. A peace I hadn't realized I was still chasing. I found myself in Henry's old study. His brass compass still sat on the desk beside a photograph of the two of us from years ago. Me at 16, awkward and smiling, him steady and kind. The note he'd left with the compass had yellowed at the edges. "You'll know you're home when direction stops mattering." I picked it up and smiled. "I think I finally get it," I whispered. Noah appeared at the door, leaning on the frame. "You still talk to him?" "Every day," I said. He smiled. "Does he ever answer?" "Always. Just not in words." He crossed the room and took my hand. "You did it, Emma. You turned a wound into something whole." I shook my head. "Not whole. Honest. Wholeness comes and goes, but honesty stays." I placed the compass beside Henry's photograph, the firelight catching on its brass edges. "Thank you," I whispered, "for teaching me what really lasts." Outside, snow fell heavier, covering the garden, the roads, the marks of what once was. In the window's reflection, I saw my own face, older, steadier, no longer defined by the Carter name. The world would forget our scandal one day. The news cycles would fade. But this house, these people, this truth would remain. Because the real inheritance wasn't the company or the fortune or even the name carved into marble. It was the courage to start again with honesty and love. Empires fall, fortunes fade, but a foundation built on truth endures. As the last flame in the fireplace flickered out, I turned off the lights, letting the glow of snow and moonlight fill the room. I whispered, "We built it right this time, Grandpa." Then I stepped into the hall, the quiet of the house wrapping around me like forgiveness. And for the first time since the night that Bruise appeared under his eye, I didn't feel haunted by what we lost. I felt guided by what we found. People think revenge means destruction, but sometimes it's rebuilding what others tried to ruin and doing it better, quieter, kinder. I didn't destroy my family's empire to watch it burn. I let it fall, so something honest could grow from the ashes. And maybe that's the only victory that matters. Not proving them wrong, but proving that truth survives. If it were you, standing in my place, holding a legacy built on lies, would you expose it or walk away in silence? Tell me what you'd do. Not to judge, but to understand how far we'd all go for peace disguised as revenge.